Delighted to see you. Thank you for coming back to Bloomington. I understand you're all young leaders in your respective countries, and we're honored at Bloomington and Indiana University to have you here. I hope you have a nice visit, not only here, but in Washington, D.C. I spent a good part of my life in Washington, and it's a fascinating city to live in and to learn about. And of course, it's the central government for the United States. Now, I'm impressed that you're at Indiana University. I've been at many universities in this country and across the world, and I've seen very few institutions that are more connected to international relations in general than the one you're at here, Indiana University. It's really quite extraordinary. We're in the middle of the country, far from the east or the west coast, but because of leadership, which I'm going to talk about a little bit, of leadership at this school, over a period of years, it's developed an extraordinary number of connections with international programs. We've got about 13 or 15,000 Indiana University alumni all over the world. I cannot remember, I think, being in a country when I did not visit with IU alum. They're all over the place. Now we're going to count you as IU alums too. I hope I can see you in your country sometime, although my travel is a little more restricted than it once was. But the university has extraordinary international connections and international talent. We have a lot of students here that are exchange students. We have a lot of students here who go abroad. We have administrators who spend a lot of time in the Middle East and other places, and a remarkable faculty that brings an international dimension to almost any student's stay here at the university. I think the sun never sets on Indiana University around the world. You can go to almost any country, I think, and find some partnership that we have. Now, you're furthering that interest of ours, and we're grateful to you. I've been asked to say a few words about leadership first, and then we'll open it up for questions. I'm not sure that I'm the one to give the talk. I think maybe you ought to give it. You're the leaders. I was the leader, but I am not anymore. So you're the key people, not me. But leadership is fascinating, isn't it? It fascinates all of us. What am I supposed to do when that goes on? Quit or keep going? Keep going?
Keep going.
Okay. It's a fascinating topic. We always want good leadership. I used to conduct a lot of public meetings in Indiana and across the country, really. And one of the questions I would get repeatedly in one form or another is, where are the Abraham Lincolns? Where are the George Washingtons in the history of our country? People look back in the United States to the founding fathers as the most revered group in our history. All of whom, of course, were politicians. But interestingly enough, they don't much like the politicians we now have. And there is a yearning for leadership. All kinds of leaders. Good leaders and bad. Winston Churchill, a great leader in wartime. Mahatma Gandhi, a different kind of leader. General George Marshall, I don't know if you know that name. Revolutionary, not a Revolutionary War, but he inspired a lot of trust as a leader during World War II. Douglas MacArthur. Mother Teresa, a different kind of leader. Martin Luther King. They come in all shapes and sizes and talents. But they all have the quality of leadership. What do we mean by leadership? Well, I don't know exactly. It's one of these things, you know it when you see it, right? But basically, from my point of view, in my experience, leadership is persuasion. It is persuading people to do what you want them to do, to achieve an objective. You induce others to pursue your objectives. That's what leadership is, I think. And I am impressed that leadership makes things happen. And if you don't have leadership, things don't happen. So leadership becomes absolutely crucial. It's the essential ingredient to the success of any kind of enterprise. And without it, things don't happen. What do I mean when we talk about leadership? Well, I'll tell you the first requirement of leadership. There was a survey taken in this country some years ago that tried to identify the most essential qualities or attributes of leadership. I'd like to go around this morning and ask each one of you what you think it'll be. None of you will get it, I'm sure. Animal energy. That's it. Sheer animal energy. Leaders have energy. I've known a few leaders that I don't think had abundant energy, but not very many. Most leaders have extraordinary leadership. I spent a day one day, 18-hour day, in Santiago with Bill Clinton when he was president. It was a very full day. We must have had 15 or 20 meetings. We got back on the plane at night to fly back to the United States, and I was dead tired. All I wanted to do was eat and sleep. Bill Clinton, who'd been the key figure in all of those meetings, I was just an observer for the most part, spent the entire night, or almost the entire night, walking up and down the aisles of the airplane, trying to find somebody to talk to him. He didn't talk to me because I was too tired. Energy, sheer animal energy, is required of a leader. Vision is required. We want to put a man on the moon. John F. Kennedy, right? Vision. Franklin Roosevelt in World War II said we were going to build 50,000 airplanes in a year. A vision. And we did. Leaders have vision. Claire Barton decided that soldiers needed health care. Thomas Jefferson had a vision of democracy in America. Leaders have vision. Leaders have self-confidence. Oh boy, do they ever. A lot of them. I talked to Gorbachev one time when he was the leader of the Soviet Union. And he said a very interesting thing to me. I asked him, when did you know you were a leader? And his answer was, I can never remember ever being in a group of any kind that I didn't want to be the leader of. He said, when I was in the first grade, I wanted to be the president of the class, and all the way through school. And I didn't know him well, but I knew him. But my sense was that if he'd have been born in your country, he'd have been a leader. If he'd have been born in my country, he'd have been a leader. He had the attributes of leadership and the self-confidence to lead. We had a biography written of Abraham Lincoln by, what's her name? Doris Kearns Goodwin, right? You've all read it, I'm sure. One of the biographers, many biographers of Lincoln. But she talked about Lincoln having a team of rivals in his cabinet. Now that takes extraordinary confidence, doesn't it, if you're the president? In other words, he brought all of the leaders of America together in his cabinet, or many of them, some of whom were rivals for leadership to him, but he had confidence that he could lead a team of rivals. That's leadership. Leaders step up and take responsibility. I don't know if you know much about American sports, but you have sports in your own country. And one of the things a coach looks for when he has or she has a group of athletes in front of him, question on his or her mind of the coach, who is the go-to guy or the go-to gal? In other words, when the game is on the line and you need a point or touchdown or whatever, a score, who's the person you're going to count on? Who's the go-to guy? You need that in leadership. You need someone who will step forward. And you need good judgment. One of my personal heroes is James Madison. You know the name? James Madison was a president of the United States. Interesting guy. He wasn't very impressive. He only stood a little over 5 feet tall. He had a high-pitched voice. He was a lousy speaker. He could not command attention. You dismiss him as not worth listening to, as many did. But He had good judgment about people and about events. Superb. He was able to pick leadership out of a crowd, identify people who could step forward, and he understood the environment he was working in and where to put his energies. He had good judgment about people, events, and ideas. Leaders are decisive. In our Bible, 1 Corinthians, it says, if the trumpet gives an uncertain sound, who shall prepare himself for the battle? You got it? If you're going to lead, you got to be decisive. You cannot blow an uncertain trumpet. And being decisive is hard, because judgments are hard. But you got to make up your mind. You can't exercise leadership with but. One cannot govern if they use the word but. You've got to make up your mind what you or your country or your organization needs and be decisive about it. Oh, I can go on. There's so many qualities. Motivation. You got to be able to motivate people. You know the name Jesse Jackson? He's a former, I guess not so much now, black leader from Chicago of the civil rights movement. I asked him one time, what are the qualities you think a leader needs in the civil rights movement? And he gave me the phrase he used in every speech I ever heard him give. He was a marvelous speaker. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. You got to give people hope if you're a leader. You can't get up there and say the things that we got no chance in, there's nothing we can do. You got to keep hope alive. You got to motivate people. Oh my goodness. I'm only halfway through my list. But I think maybe I've taken enough time to talk about leadership. My work has been in the Congress. I've never worked in the executive branch. I've only worked in the Congress, the parliamentary branch. And you know the skill I look for? You got to be careful of labels. If you're a Democrat or a Republican in this country, we identify you. We all put labels on other people, don't we? Yes. We have to, I guess. But you got to be careful of it. Because when I sat down in the conference committee, which is the final legislative step before you take the bill to final vote in the House and the Senate, the thing I was interested in was not whether the person across from me was a Republican or a Democrat. It was not whether he or she was a liberal or a conservative. What I wanted to know about the person across from me was, will that person help me solve the problem? That's what I was interested in. I didn't want a speech. Anybody can give a speech. Speeches, for the most part, are not worth a diddly damn, including the one I'm giving to you now. What counts is your ability to solve the problem in front of you. That's what counts. And if a person wants to come into that conference committee and give a speech, that's okay. I've heard a lot of them. Don't pay much attention to any of them. But will that person help me reach a solution to the problem? And what skill is needed there? The skill that is needed is the skill to build consensus of the group behind a solution to the problem. That's the skill. That is, in my view, that is the most important political skill. Can you build a solution, a consensus behind a solution to solve the problem, or at least mitigate the problem? That is political skill of the highest order. And I believe it is needed, certainly in the legislature. I don't have any doubt about that. But I believe it's needed in almost any group that you're a part of. Can you bring together a group of people behind a solution and then put it into effect? Oh my. Well, maybe that's enough. I got a whole book full of stuff here. Let's open it up for questions, okay? Anybody have a question? If not, I'm through. Okay, let's start. Now speak up because I don't hear that.
My name is Ahmed Deli and I studied engineering.
Engineering?
Yeah, in Egypt, computer systems. My question is, usually in my field I got presented with problems literally related to my field, engineering.
Engineer?
Yeah. But in your life as a legislator, you usually presented with a problem which is usually related to everything in life. Like sometimes related to the internet, sometimes it's related to civil rights, and you have to draft bills to solve these problems. What kind of skills should someone get to just solve all the problem, or just what range of domains?
Well, that's right. When you're dealing in my business, politics, and government, depending on what office you're in, you're trying to build a consensus across a broad array of people who have a lot of different views, right? You begin by listening. You sit down in that group, whatever it is, or maybe you sit down on the floor of the House or the Senate, and you listen to people talk about the problem. And you ask yourself certain questions. What is that person for? What are they against? What are they open to persuasion on? What are their red lines? In other words, what, they cannot accept some things, or they must have certain things in order for them to agree. You have to listen to find out where the people are in front of you. Now, you bring your own views to the table. So you're sitting there and asking yourself, what can I agree with and what can I not accept from my point of view? And you have to ask yourself, what are the commonalities? You hear 5 or 10 people give a speech. They all say different things. And you ask yourself, what are the common features of what they have said? And how can I devise a solution that will get their support? It's a process I don't think you can force to build a consensus. But once you've done it, you've got something that'll stick. Questions?
I am Mahmoud Barham from Palestine. Mr. Hamilton, after you spent more than 50 years as a political man, and you enter this field since you are a youth, so what's the biggest challenge you faced when you enter the Congress and the most people there are older than you?
Look, you come into the Congress, which is an institution that has run for many years on seniority. You know what I mean by that? The longer you're there, the more you go up in power, basically, stature sometimes. So you have to understand that you're the new guy on the block. Nobody knows who you are. Most of them don't give a damn who you are. And they're either going to listen to you or not, depending on your attitude toward the group and the validity, legitimacy of what you say. You have to earn your spurs. You don't get anything automatically. So you got to have the right frame of mind when you go into a group of your seniors. Now, the Congress has improved a little bit over the years. When I first went to the Congress, the advice I got was keep your mouth shut. Don't talk. I don't think that's true anymore. Everybody in the room with respect. That's it. Nothing complicated about it. Hard to do. I've sat in meetings when somebody would get up and say, Hamilton, you're one son of a bitch. It's hard to treat that person with respect. But you have to try. Treat everybody in the room with respect and dignity. When you think about George Washington, he was not a very effective speaker, not a good orator. He wasn't the brightest guy in the room, usually. There were a lot of people smarter than he was, and he knew it. But he had one thing that really stood out, I think, and that's character. He was a person of impeccable character, and he earned the respect over time, not immediately, of everybody. And I think in large part, it was because of the way he treated people. Treat people with dignity and respect. Okay? Yeah.
Mr. Hamilton, you are a leading figure in the foreign policy, intelligence, and the security of the U.S. From your experience on 9/11 and task on force and terrorism ideology, do you think that the military intervention is the right solution for terrorism in the region?
What is the right solution?
For terrorism,
Military.
the military intervention
For what?
for terrorism.
For terrorism.
For what?
Terrorism.
Terrorism.
What's the solution?
Is military intervention is the best?
What?
Is military intervention is the best solution?
Terrorism is a very complicated phenomenon. It's not a nation state. You have to understand the grievances. Why do people commit acts of terror? Why? If you don't look at that question, you're not going to solve the problem in the long run. But the problem is, from our point of view in the United States, for too long, we have tried to deal with the problem of terrorism with military intervention alone, or almost alone. And it doesn't work.
Still up.
So you tried to solve Iraq with military force, unsuccessful. You try to solve Afghanistan with military force, unsuccessful, largely. You try to solve the Israeli-Palestinian problem, you can't do it with force. Now, is force a necessary component? Yes, it is. Are there occasions when you have to use it? Yes, there are. But don't reach for the gun first. The preferred option is diplomacy. And if you're really going to solve it, if it can be solved, sometimes it can, you have to make an effort to solve those grievances. My experience is that terrorists often have valid grievances. Not necessarily do I agree with them all, but they feel like they have been not listened to, putting it mildly. They've been neglected, that nobody gives a damn about them. And they strike back. It's the only way they know to get attention to their problem in horrible ways, often. So it's a very tough thing to deal with. You know one thing that works? Talking. Talk, talk, talk. It's better to jaw, jaw, jaw than to war, war, war. Right? Winston Churchill. Now, how do you talk? Sometimes you can't. Takes two to talk. They won't sit down with you. But your objective has to be, eventually, to talk. Now, don't get me wrong, it's an easy thing to say. It's very, very hard to carry out. And it tests your patience. But I think the places where I've seen where you've made some progress, you've had negotiators, officials, who've tried to talk and understand and help people solve their problems to the best that they can, and their limitations, of course. Yeah.
Congressman, my name is Saifuddin. I come from Tunisia. I am an architect. I was actually going to ask you about what does leadership mean to you, but here you had a great introduction for us, an inspiring one. You have talked about the different backgrounds from which each congressman comes with. And with these backgrounds, different values and different principles come along. And to reach the consensus you've talked about, sometimes there must be some concessions. So my question is, what were the times that you felt that your values or your principles were challenged? Thank you.
Every time I sat down, you're going to be challenged on something that you hold important. If it's a negotiation of any consequence at all.
Was there any specific moment?
Well, I'm trying to think of a specific negotiation. Oh my. Maybe I'll think of one in a while. I don't think of one. Not sure I can answer that offhand. I'd have to think about that a little bit. Yeah.
Well, hello, I'm Lamia from Morocco, and I'm an architecture student. First of all, thank you for honoring us with your presence. And it's been a great pleasure being here at IU and in Bloomington.
Thank you.
So from what we've learned about you, from what you just said, you've had a busy and impressive career. So my question is, I'm curious about what was the most defining moment in your life? That one moment or specific event that started everything as a leader?
Oh, I can't answer that. Where are these questions coming from? I can't answer them. Look, I don't look back and find any one thing I did or did not do stand out. I want you to know that I failed a lot more than I succeeded. It didn't get accomplished what I wanted to. You're going to fail. And if you can't take failure, forget it. You're going to fail. What pleases me, I think, is that I've had a seat at the table. And I had an opportunity to speak up and say what I thought was a solution to the problem. And people would listen. Sometimes they thought I was nuts, that's okay. But I had a seat at the table. And as I look back on all kinds of negotiations, I'm pleased that I had an opportunity to step forward and try to contribute to a solution to the problem. Look, anybody can go into the room where you have divergent opinions and blow it apart. Right? That's easy to do. I've done it. I know. What's hard is to go into that room where you have divergent points of view and bring people together. That's hard. That is political skill. of the highest order, consensus building. And that's what I think we need more of. We don't need more politicians that can give a fancy speech. We got a dozen of them in every room. Hell's bells. That's not the talent we need. Look, we got a country here. You have a country there, wherever it is, that's got big problems, right? Those problems have to be solved, or at least attacked. And in order to do that, you need a lot of people working on it and a lot of different skills. And you've got a pragmatic problem in front of you, or problems, probably. And you've got to try to solve it. But that's not the test. The test is what my country needs. And my guess is your country needs is people who can solve problems, or try to solve them. Now look, you can't solve them all. One of the beginnings of wisdom is to understand that you cannot solve all the problems in front of you. You're not smart enough. You're not talented enough. Nor am I. And the tough judgment you often have to make is what problems can be solved or mitigated and which ones cannot be. There are some problems you simply have to put aside and come back to another day, if at all. And other problems you think you can make right. Now, you don't always make the right judgment there. But that's what you got to try to do. Yes.
My name is Wahiba. I'm from Algeria. And first of all, I would like to thank you for being here and giving us such an inspiring and wise speech. I have actually two questions for you. The first one is, what made you decide to become a congressman when you have started your career as a lawyer in a private company? And my second question is related to your previous experience in international affairs, especially in the MENA region. Our region is now a conflict zone with many countries facing civil wars. Do you think that the U.S. intervention in these regions is making things worse because of conflict, interest conflicts with Russia or China? And how can the USA play a positive role in the region instead of negative? Thank you.
I was practicing law, and I decided to try politics, right? Why? I got bored practicing law. Lawyers are bright people for the most part. The law is very tedious, especially for a young guy who is out of law school and they send you to the library to research things. And I got bored. I said, I got to do something else. I said that to a group of law students the other day, and I think the professor was going to throw me out of school. She probably was right to think that. The answer was honest, but not diplomatic. Now the other question was what was the second question?
The U.S. intervention in the MENA region, how can USA play a positive role in?
What's that?
U.S. intervention
Intervention?
yes, in the MENA region, and how can USA play a positive role in the MENA region instead of...
Look, in general, I'm skeptical of intervention. Military intervention has its place, but it doesn't usually solve the problem, and it very often, almost always, creates what they call, you've heard, unintended consequences. You can't control military power like you think you can. The United States has been dealing with the problems in your part of the world for a long, long time. So one of the things that comes to me is that progress comes in small steps, incrementally. You can't solve it all. Another thing comes to me is that we in the United States cannot solve your problem. Can't do it. We may think you understand the country, we understand your country well, but we really don't. And the thing about U.S. leadership, which you undoubtedly have noted, is that it turns over constantly. Nobody is a leader for very long, especially at the top. So every president comes in and says, I'm going to solve the Middle East. They're in office for a while and they figure they can't solve it or don't solve it. They give up on it. Give up. Or retreat to something that's not unimportant but incremental. So, if you're going to solve the problems in your area of the world, you have to do it. Now we can help. I don't want to mean we back away. Sometimes that means force. Most of the time, in my view, not. Sometimes it may. We can help with money. We should help with money. I want the United States to be a benign power. I want the United States to be a good power. Where there is human rights abuse, or tragedy, or disaster, I want us to be there with all of the skill and help we can provide. When young boys are trapped in a cave, I want the United States to send every expert we've got and spare no expense to get those boys out of the cave. I want the United States to be a benign power. Now, you can't do everything. We got limited resources. We got a lot of people who say to me, to hell with the Middle East. We spent a lot of money over there. We've lost lives over there. We've been doing it for decades, why bother? That is not an insignificant portion of the American electorate. I stated rather bluntly, but you get the point. So I don't want to come across here as being not willing to help you on your problems. I am. I want to put the money into it, maybe force on occasion, but likely not. I want to put, look, every diplomat we have who has expertise in your area ought to be working in Algeria and Israel and Jordan and Morocco to help solve problems. And if your people say you can help us, and this is the way you can help us, we ought to be open to that. But I'll tell you this, unless your leadership is trying to solve the problem, there's no sense in us being involved in it, because we can't solve it for sure. It's going to take both of us. So, if I get a request from Lebanon, when I'm in office, the first thing I want to know is, what is the Lebanese government willing to do to help me? And what do they want from us? And if their attitude is you come in there and solve the problem, I'll tell you, forget it. Because we can't do it.
Yeah. Last question.
What's that?
We're time for one last question.
Please.
One last question. Oh boy, you pick the last one. I'm not going to pick it.
Okay.
Well, you call on Badis, right? You call on Badis.
Okay. Thank you, Congressman, for taking the time and for your valuable comments. So, given your expertise in the field of security and homeland security, how do you envision and empower the role of the citizen to become a leading centerpiece in implementing national strategies regarding security?
Nobody ever said representative democracy is easy. I believe that representative democracy is one of the greatest achievements in the history of mankind. I really believe that. It is a monumental achievement. But it's very hard to make it work. Very hard, as I've tried to express. Now, how do you make it work? The citizen has to step forward to solve the problem. That's it. Wherever they are, they have to help solve the problem. Now, most of us cannot solve the big problems because we don't have the skill or the authority or the reach to do it. I know a woman lives in the north part of Clark County. That's a county down south. She had a 15-year-old daughter who was killed at a railroad crossing in a tragic accident. She came to me and to others and said, "What can I do?" She was devastated. She finally decided she'd go to work and try to make railroad crossings in the state of Indiana safer. And she did. And I can say without any doubt in my mind at all that that one woman who did not know a mayor from a county councilman, who did not know a Republican from a Democrat when she started, that one woman has made almost every railroad crossing in the state of Indiana safer. Citizen power. I can repeat that story 50 times. Citizens have to step up. And if we don't, in my country, many, many things don't get accomplished. So being a citizen is very hard work, very challenging, and very essential to make our system of representative democracy work. Now people are busy. They got a lot of things to do. They got a family to raise. They got a job to earn a living at. But the great thing, or one of the great things about representative democracy, is that there are multiple ways you can step in and make your corner of the world a little better. And that's what you have to try to do. You can't do any more, but you got to try to do that. And you have to decide what your corner of the world is and what you can do to make it better. You know more about your community. I know more about my community than anybody else, right? You know what its strengths are and what its weaknesses are. And you got to try to figure out where you can help make it better. That's pretty good note to end on, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Congressman.